Surface Electromyo. What? If you are looking for a tool to level up your dysphagia treatment game, this is one tool with a list of benefits longer than its name. There's been recent buzz around sEMG in the Med SLP world. This isn't a new technology. In fact, it's been around for decades. But what exactly is it? What does it measure? And what can it do for your dysphagia therapy? I'm so glad you asked. Let's dive in. I'm Theresa Richard. I've been a medical speech pathologist for 15 years. I'm a board-certified specialist in swallowing and swallowing disorders. I'm the founder and CEO of the Med SLP Collective and Med SLP Education. Surface electromyography is simply a measurement of what we're already doing. This form of biofeedback is in addition to the exercises we use with our patients. It doesn't change what our patients are doing, but improves how well our patients are completing their swallowing exercises. So let's discuss what it does and what it doesn't do. It doesn't measure muscle contraction. It measures the electrical activity associated with muscle contraction through electrodes attached to the surface of the skin. That's Vygotsky 2017. It doesn't create muscle contraction or provide stimulation in any way. It simply measures the electrical activity that is created by the muscle contraction the patient creates. It is typically used to look at the activity of the submental muscles, including the geniohyoid, mylohyoid, and anterior belly of the digastric, but it can be used on facial muscles as well. sEMG creates a visual representation of the electrical activity created during muscle contraction that is measured through electrodes and displayed on the device or app. sEMG is like turning on the lights in a dark room for our patients. It lets them see their efforts, and I think we can all agree it's much easier to learn a new task when we can see a visual of our performance versus just feeling our way through and stumbling around without the lights on. Number 2, feedback is how we learn. Think about when we're first learning to perform any skill. We don't usually nail it on the first try. What's that saying? If at first you don't succeed, try again? It holds true for swallowing too. So what makes the difference between the first attempt and the 21st attempt when we finally get it right? Each time you attempt the task, you're getting feedback about your accuracy and making adjustments to improve your performance. If you're a toddler learning to walk, this feedback might come in the form of meeting the floor a little more closely. If you're learning to say a new sound, the feedback comes in the form of the auditory production you hear when attempting to say the sound. It may not be correct the first time, but after multiple attempts and recalibration of your efforts, you eventually get there. Now, the same can be said with learning to perform swallowing exercises and using sEMG. When you're attempting the Mendelssohn maneuver, for example, and you see the visual representation of the signal on the screen rise and stay up until you relax, you're getting visual feedback about what's going on in your muscles that you use to hold the larynx up. Although this may not happen on the first try, just like any other new task that we attempt. Without this visual feedback from the sEMG device, how do our patients, and us as SLPs, know if a patient is actually doing a Mendelssohn or not? How do we know if the swallow is truly effortful or just a regular swallow? We know we should train this under fluoro or during a FEES, but sometimes that's not possible within the constraints of real life in the clinical world. I don't know about your radiologist, but the ones I've worked with don't love the idea of any more radiation for the patient than absolutely necessary. And while I would love to see FEES in every facility where SLPs work, I know that's just not the current reality we live in. So all of that to say, sEMG is a great, usually more accessible option for providing the feedback your patient needs to learn how to correctly complete their swallowing exercises. A conversation in the Med SLP Collective started a while back when a member was asking for input on sEMG and asked for other SLPs' experiences with using it with their patients. One of our mentors shared her experience and said, "I find sEMG to be a valuable tool for training proper form and technique for swallowing maneuvers and exercises, such as the effortful swallow and the Mendelssohn maneuver. Most systems have a software component allowing for visual displays of the sEMG signal, including games that can make training more engaging for the client." Another member chimed in and shared, "I've used it, I own one, and I really enjoy it for training swallowing exercises. Instead of just saying swallow hard, we can practice hard versus regular swallow. The biofeedback is super helpful." I'll be posting other videos just like this one that you won't want to miss, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Do you have any specific questions about sEMG? Leave a comment below and tell me about it. We'll be sure to get your questions answered as soon as possible. Make sure to stick around to the end to claim a freebie or two. Number 3, sEMG is an art just as much as it is a science. It's not a perfected process, but it is a very helpful piece of the big picture that is being supported more and more in the literature. One important thing to know about sEMG is how the signal may be impacted differently from patient to patient. The signal has to travel through layers of muscle, vasculature, fat, skin, and sometimes facial hair before it gets to the surface where your electrodes can detect it. And we know that body composition is different for each patient, which can impact the signal. The signal we get from electrodes on the skin won't be the same signal as if you had an electrode inserted into the muscle. Dr. Gabby Constantinescu describes the change of the signal as similar to listening to a group of people talking through a wall versus an open door, or playing a guitar in a soundproof studio versus a regular room. The stimulus that creates the signal is the same, but our perception of it is different based on the circumstances surrounding it. Not only is the signal changed by the composition of the patient's body, but it can be changed by the technology that you've chosen. This might look a little different from brand to brand. This is why electrode placement, calibration, and consistently using the same device and the electrodes intended for that device is vital when using sEMG if you're wanting to use the data you collect to compare one session to another. If you use one device on your patient for one session and another device 10 minutes later, you're essentially comparing apples to oranges, and their swallow may appear to have drastically improved or declined based on the representation of the signal, while we know change doesn't happen that fast. There are multiple factors at play, and they're all a little different for each patient. Just like everything else, when it comes to providing the best care, we have to look at the bigger picture and move away from any one-size-fits-all approaches to evaluation and treatment of these incredibly complex patients. Instead of setting a goal for particular amplitude, setting a goal for a percentage improvement when comparing a regular swallow to an effortful swallow, or a goal for duration of the Mendelssohn are great options for each session. It's important to consider patient goals as well, like improved oral control, safely eating a favorite food, or decreasing the amount of time it takes to finish a meal. Biofeedback can be so helpful for patients that like games or competition to keep them engaged with therapy. Many sEMG biofeedback companies have gamified the software, which allows the patient to compete against themselves like a video game. I remember working with one older gentleman a few years ago who couldn't have been any less interested in doing traditional dysphagia exercises. He was a previous computer engineer, and when I explained to him that we could use sEMG biofeedback where he would be able to visually see himself participating in the exercises and compete against himself, he was sold. He became a model patient after a few days and was so excited to see his swallow and beat his scores from the previous days. If you want to learn more about sEMG, make sure to check out the Swallow Your Pride podcast, where Dr. Gabby Constantinescu and I discuss all things sEMG in episode 231, Exercise, Sensors, and Adherence, Tools for Dysphagia Management. You can find the link to this episode in the comments. Want more support and resources to help level up your dysphagia treatment game? We have a robust and vibrant community of SLPs and mentors to help you out over at Med SLP Collective. Head over to medslpcollective.com/join to become a member today and improve your practice tomorrow. Once you're a member, you can watch our virtual vendor fair with Dr. Constantinescu, where she shares the ins and outs and the nitty-gritty of the Mobility sEMG technology.